Hari. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Premanandi. Hari Hari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Before, we want to say this together? Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and Prabhupada, the translator and commentator. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering service unto the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental song, is established as an irrevocable fact. Hare Krishna. So nice. Omagina Timidandasya Dhinanjana Salakaya Chaksu Umilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master very kindly forced open my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. Therefore, I'm indebted to him life after life, indebted to him eternally, and beg for service life after life. Hare Krishna. So, you guys are starting the first canto again. That's so nice. It's first canto, first chapter is so full of nectar. It's amazing. So we're going to concentrate on verse 4 to 8. Do I have that right? And 6 and 8 are our focus verses. Okay, so, but let's get started because you're just started yesterday, correct? Or whatever. Whatever. First of all, first verse. What's the first verse establishing? Do you remember? Because we're getting a series of important points here, just right in this first few verses. Jonathan.
Kind of establishing the position of Krishna, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of establishing the position of Krishna, yes, and particularly, his transcendental position. This is telling us what the Bhagavatam is focusing on. It's focusing on Sri Krishna. Can you remember any of the things from that very first verse? There was 7 little items of Krishna's transcendental personality. Very, impossible to imitate. He's the cause of all causes, right? Cause of all causes. It's easy to say, but actually think about that. He's the source of everything. Okay, I'll go through this a little quick. But the one that I wanted was that he imparted Vedic knowledge to Brahmaji. And how did he impart it? He revealed himself in the heart of Brahmaji. It's revealed knowledge that's revealed to qualified personalities. So then the next few verses are talking about what the Bhagavatam is going to talk about. It's the second verse. Remember the second verse? Advaita? Whatever you can pull.
Yeah, it's all about Bhagavatam.
Yep, it's all about Bhagavatam and how its special position.
And as one accepts Bhagavatam and the highest truths represented there, he's going to experience he's going to rid himself of miseries.
Yeah, let's go, right? So here we're, first verse, establishing the position of Krishna so we can understand, broaden our concept of God, right? Our concept of God, most of us, our upbringing, concept of God, he's great, he's good, he's this, he's that, which is all true. But these verses really expand your conception of God. So the second verse is explaining Bhagavatam and the characteristics of the Bhagavatam. It distinguishes reality from illusion for the highest welfare of all. That's very profound. Okay, and then what it's doing is is establishing the importance of the person who's speaking the Bhagavatam. Okay, Vyasadeva and subsequent speakers of the Bhagavatam, they need some qualification of purity, of faith, and of understanding of the Bhagavatam. And also, in order to get the full experience, the listener also needs some qualification. So all of those things are going in a systematic way. And today we're on number 4. So we'll go to number 4. And we'll read through our verses. We'll read from 4 to 8 in English, and then we'll go back and do the 6th and the 8th verse in Sanskrit. Okay? So 4. Who would like to start?
Once, in a holy place of the forest of Naimisharanya, great sages headed by sage Shonaka assembled to perform a great 1,000-year sacrifice for the satisfaction of the Lord and his devotees. Okay,
so a little bit of an explanation there. So this Bhagavatam is spoken. So we're already, when you think of the Bhagavatam, you're thinking of Sukadeva Goswami speaking to Maharaj Pariksit, right? Here it is saying that what we're hearing now is from Shonaka, and that he spoke in Naimisharanya. So how did that happen? So Bhagavatam is a conversation within a conversation within a conversation. And then there's quoting in the stories many other conversations of great sages. So yes, Sukadeva Goswami spoke to Maharaj Pariksit on the bank of the Jamuna, Ganges Jamuna, okay? In that assembly, when he spoke, Shonaka was there. Shonaka heard from Sukadeva while he was speaking to Pariksit. After it was finished, Shonaka went to Naimisharanya, which is being explained here. Shonaka went to Naimisharanya, and there was an even greater assembly of sages. I heard there was 85,000 sages there. 85,000, that's a big crowd. That's like a football crowd. Can you, okay. So Shonaka heard, and Shonaka heard. And who was the person that was questioning? It's an S, blanking out. Shonaka spoke. Shonaka spoke. Who?
I thought he was just speaking to the sages.
Yeah, he was speaking to the sages, but there was a person that was representing. Was Sutta. Yeah, Sutta. Okay. That's great, an explanation. I can't even remember it. Okay, sorry. Okay, so where am I? Okay, assembled. Oh, okay. Yeah, so Sutta was the one who was speaking. Shonaka was the hearer. Okay, yeah. Thank you, Krishna. Sorry about that, Bruce. Okay, so continuing on with text 5. Here we are. Text 5. Charanti, can you read text 5?
One day, after finishing their morning duties by burning a sacrificial fire and offering a seat of esteem to Srila Sutta Goswami, the great sages made inquiries with great respect about the following matters.
There's a little interesting story about Sutta Goswami that I'll narrate very quickly. Sutta Goswami, do you happen to remember who his father was? Romaharshan. So when the Battle of Kurukshetra started and both Krishna and Balaram decided that they didn't want to personally take part, Krishna's program was he became the chariot driver of Arjuna, and his armies were donated to Duryodhana. And Balaram decided, I'm going on pilgrimage. I'm out of here. I don't want to stick around. I don't want to see it, so I'm out of here. So he went on pilgrimage. So Balaram went on pilgrimage. And one of the places that he came to, Romaharshan was speaking to some sages. That was actually in Naimisharanya. And when Balaram entered, all the sages stood up and acknowledged his presence. Everyone did that except for Romaharshan. And technically speaking, if a person is sitting on a Vyasa-san, that he has a seat of esteem, he's a qualified person. So technically speaking, when different people come in, he doesn't end up because he's in an elevated position. But if you think of the circumstance, it's not every day that the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes in. You know, he came in, and he could have acknowledged him in any way at all, but he didn't acknowledge him. And Lord Balaram thought, although he's seated on this great seat of esteem, he hasn't really assimilated totally the proper understanding of the Bhagavatam and giving proper respect to the devotees and to the Supreme Lord. So therefore, Balaram said, he's not quite qualified for this. So he just happened to pick up a little blade of grass and touched him with a little blade of grass, which took his life away. Now, the sages in the area, they were like a little shocked and at the same time, startled but they understood Lord Balaram's position as the Supreme Lord. But they were in a little dilemma because they had just given Ramaharshan a benediction that he would have a long life. Didn't last very long, but anyway, a long life, and you'd be able to speak the Bhagavatam nicely and this and that, and have a good understanding of the Bhagavatam. So they were like in a dilemma, and they approached Balaram and said, can you solve this dilemma? Balaram said, no problem. I can bring him back to life if you want. And they said, no, we like everything that you did, but can you solve our dilemma? That we just gave him the benediction and then you took his life. He said, no problem. Balaram figured it out in half a second. He said, okay, we'll just give the benedictions to his son, Sutta. We'll give all of those benedictions that you gave to Ramaharshan to his son, because the son is a representative of the father. So Sutta Goswami, highly qualified as he was, got benedictions of a long life and the ability to understand the scriptures and speak it nicely. Yes, Jonathan.
Just really quick regarding that pastime. And then didn't Balaram have to make up for it too, also by going on pilgrimage and visiting different
doing different yes, he did. He didn't technically speaking, he didn't have to, but he did it as an example, because yad acharati shrestha, whatever the exalted person does or a famous person does, then people follow in their footsteps. So although he's the Supreme Lord and he's not under the rules and regulations, still he did it to set a good example. Yes, he did. Okay, so 5, 6. Can we go for 6 now? Yes, Bruce, right? Yay, thank you. Okay.
The sages said, respected Shuta Goswami, you are completely free from all vice. You are well versed in all the scriptures famous for religious life, and in the Puranas, and the histories as well. For you have gone through them under proper guidance and have also explained them.
Okay, so this verse, thank you. This verse is explaining the qualifications of the speaker. We'll come back to that and go on now. Okay, 7. Anyone? Yes. Would you like to try? Go ahead. What's your name? Bridget. Okay, Bridget, go ahead. Welcome. I mean, you've been here a long time. Welcome. Just nice to meet you, I should say. Okay, thanks.
Being the eldest learned
Vedantist.
Shuta Goswami.
Yes, very good.
Acquainted with the knowledge of
Vyasadeva,
who is the incarnation of Godhead. And you also know other sages who are fully versed in all kinds of physical and metaphysical knowledge.
You got one with a lot of hard names. You did great. Okay, number 8, please.
And because you are submissive, your spiritual masters have endowed you with all the favors bestowed upon a gentle disciple. Therefore, you can tell us all that you have scientifically learned from them.
Thank you. So we'll come back to this verse too, but just pointing out that last sentence, therefore you can tell us all that you have scientifically learned from them. It's a science. This nature, the understanding the Lord is a science, but we'll come to that. Okay, let's go to number 6, please. Then we'll chant to Sanskrit. Oh, I forgot. practice it. Rishaya Uchu Tvaya Kalo Puranani Tvaya Kalo Puranani Seti Hasani Chanaga Seti Hasani Chanaga Akyayantyapyada Adhitani Akyatanyapya Adhitani Dharma Shastrani Yanyuta Dharma Shastrani Yanyuta Rishaya Uchu Tvaya Kalo Puranani Seti Hasani Chanaga Akyantanyapyatitani Dharma Shastrani Yanyuta. Chanters, couple of chanters, please. Rishaya Uchu Tvaya Kalu Puranani Jeti Hasani Chanaga Akyantanyapyadatani Dharma Shastrani Yanyuta. One more, come on. Rishaya Uchu Tvaya Kalu Puranani Seti Hasani Chanaga Akyantanyapyatitani Dharma Shastrani Yanyuta. And I'm just going to read through the word for word. Rishaya, the sages, Uchu said, Tvaya, by you, Kalu, undoubtedly, Puranani, the supplements to the Vedas with illustrative narrations, Sa Itihasani, along with the histories, Cha and Anaga, freed from all vices, Akyatani, explained, Api, although, Adhitani, well read, Dharma Shastrani, scriptures giving right directions to progressive life, Yani, all these, Uta, said. Translation and purport by Prabhupada. The sages said, respected Sutta Goswami, you are completely free from all vice. You are well versed in all the scriptures famous for religious life and in the Puranas and the histories as well, for you have gone through them under proper guidance and have also explained them. Hare Krishna. Let's say it together. The sages said, respected Sutta Goswami, you are completely free from all vice. You are well versed in all the scriptures famous for religious life and in the Puranas and in the histories as well, for you have gone through them under proper guidance and have also explained them. So Srila Prabhupada is going to explain in the purport what are the vices and what a little bit about the Puranas and everything. So let's read through the purport, please. Somebody start. Yes, Bruce, go ahead.
Goswami, or the bona fide representative of Sri Vyasadeva, must be free from all kinds of vices. The four major vices of Kali Yuga are 1. Illicit connection with women, 2. Animal slaughter, 3. Intoxication, 4. Speculative gambling of all sorts. A Goswami must be free from all these vices before he can dare to sit on the Vyasasan. No one should be allowed to sit on the Vyasasan who is not spotless in character and who is not freed from the above-mentioned vices.
Okay, let's pause there for a second. Thanks. So why do you think that's important? Why? So Prabhupada's stressing or and the verses are stressing, Srila Vyasadeva is stressing, that one has to be pure in character. Why do you think that's important? Go for it. Microphone.
So they don't obscure the Shastra, so they can actually repeat it through pure senses versus contaminated senses.
Okay, that's important. Okay. Other thoughts, Bruce?
So that they aren't tempted to twist around the meanings and mislead people.
Yeah, good too. Advaita Prabhu?
Just, in general, people don't listen unless you walk the talk.
Good point. And Radhika, thanks. Sorry.
Thinking because their consciousness will also affect the consciousness of those hearing from them.
Yeah, true. So all those points are very well taken. And the point, Advaita's point also is there. If we're hearing, if you're saying, don't do this, don't do that, live a pure life, this and that, and that person isn't doing it, not walking the talk, you know, what there's a disconnect there. There's a disconnect. So it's very, very important. And it's the way Srila Prabhupada, he writes in such forceful language. No one should dare sit on the Vyasa-san unless he's not free from all vice. So yeah. But then he's saying at least the major four regulative principles there can't be broken by someone who's attempting to speak from the Bhagavatam, because also these things, they are a sign of one's commitment to the process and one's assimilation of the instructions, that they can assimilate and understand the value of following these things and how not following affects every aspect of your life, and become, in other words, it's not a program for cheaters and cheated. It's not something, somebody has to be in a position not cheating themselves internally or presenting themselves as something that they're not, and has to be on that level. Okay, let's continue on. He should not only, anyone? Go ahead, Bruce. Thanks.
He not only should be freed from all such vices, but must also be well versed in all revealed scriptures or in the Vedas. The Puranas are also parts of the Vedas, and histories like Mahabharata or Ramayana are also parts of the Vedas. The Acharya or the Goswami must be well acquainted with all these literatures. To hear and explain them is more important than reading them. One can assimilate the knowledge of the revealed scriptures only by hearing and explaining. Hearing is called swarna, and explaining is called kirtana.
Okay, hold on a second. Thanks. There's something very important in those couple of sentences that we read. Did anybody catch anything that might have caught your attention in that what was just read by Bruce? Should I say that again? That's true. I wouldn't have put it in that way, but it is true. It's not that you don't have to hear, but the way that Prabhupada said it. Well, does it really say you don't have to? Okay, what Prabhupada said, thanks. To hear and explain them is more important than reading them. Let's dissect that a little bit. Let's try to understand that. Sharon, did you have anything you'd like to say about it? Just to start off the conversation. Why do you think why is he saying that? Because for someone, probably for Bridget, who's probably the newest person here today, that's okay. So she's probably just hearing these things for, a few times now. For the rest of us that have been around for even a few weeks or a few months, we've probably heard, you've got to hear, you've got to hear, you've got to hear, you got to keep reading, you got to keep reading so much, and so why is he saying, well, to hear and explain is more important than reading? Oh, actually, I think we should have Nitai say it. So let's give him a mic. Can we throw over a mic for him? Sorry. I'm gonna let you get off the hook from what you just said. And put it in proper perspective, because what you said wasn't wrong, but we'd like to put it in a proper perspective.
Well, I just said it because you asked what is striking, and that was striking for me.
It was very striking, yes, but now explain why is it important and how.
Instead of just like reading and
Put it up closer, because there's people far away that are
instead of
listening.
reading and memorizing like some scholars do, they probably read a lot of literature, like bhakti literature, but they read it from a scholarly point of view. They don't hear it from a right source, so they're not able to explain it the right way. So
Very good point. It's very important. It's very important to hear from the proper source. Any other discussion that we can have on this? Nate?
Hearing implies more internalization of the information, because especially like in reading textbooks lately, so I know that reading doesn't mean you're actually like taking anything.
Yeah, good point. That's the point. And so we can take a hint from that when we do read, because we do need to read. Thank you. We do need to read. That's part of our hearing process. We need to read in a thoughtful way. There's actually a Sanskrit word for that, mananam. What you read, and then you think about it, and then you digest it, and then you speak it. Because it's digested. That just remind me of birds. Remember how, you get your little bird, your little nest egg, and the bird comes out of his little eggshell, and his mother feeds him from what she's eaten. I won't go into the details, but anyway, that's his baby food for right now. That's his baby. So our hearing is tested. It's tested when we speak. Did we really hear it properly? Are we able to repeat it properly? Did we digest it? Did we assimilate it? Can we say it? We can. Sometimes the stress is given how it's not meant that we hear and repeat it verbatim per se, like a parrot repeats, because if parrot's just repeating the vibration, but that we digest it and repeat it with the same meaning and the same source and the same purity, so that it actually shows that we've been meditating on it, thinking about it. So that's a habit that we need to try to break when we read, that we read mindlessly. It's easy to do, very easy to do. And then break that habit and read thoughtfully, and how to get in the habit of what we read, then we repeat. It doesn't mean always in an official setting with a microphone in front of your mouth, but to your friends, to your associates. And that makes for a very transcendental atmosphere, because you're reading from one part, you're reading from something else, and everybody's talking about Krishna in such a nice way. And another thing is that when you read something and then you go to repeat it, and then you realize, just like I did a minute ago when we were talking about Sutta and Sonaka, that you remembered it properly. So, sometimes the story, if it's a story form, the stories have complicated nuances in it, or if it's a philosophical point, it has all many different supporting arguments to whatever, that you hear it properly. And then when you repeat it and you realize, oh, I got stuck on that point, oh, I couldn't remember that detail, then you go back and read it again, and it sticks in the mind better. So that's a very, very important point. And then I'll just finish. Bruce, you can just finish, actually, please. Sorry, the last couple of sentences. The two processes.
The two processes of Shravana, and Kirtana are of primary importance to progressive spiritual life. Only one who has properly grasped the transcendental knowledge from the right source by submissive hearing can properly explain the subject.
Yeah. So Nitai made that point also when he was explaining that you have to hear from the right source. You have to hear from somebody who actually understands it purely. And by hearing, and Prabhupada, that's another thing that, get ready, Bridget, you're going to hear that a lot. Hear from the proper source. You're going to hear that a lot. And it makes so much sense. Make sure that you're hearing from somebody who understands it properly. And understanding it properly in our association means that someone has to be purely in line with what's called the disciplic succession, the teacher and the line of teacher to student, so that it's not changed in any way. Not changed in any way has, it doesn't mean that it can't be expressed in our own terms, and then also maybe perhaps different examples might be given than that are originally given, or maybe a more modern example that one could relate to in this day and age. That's okay, but it has to have the same import. It has to have the same thing, or else it won't have the same effect on the heart and the consciousness. And when it does have that, when it is spoken from somebody who has a pure consciousness, or pure consciousness and pure activities, then it can have an effect on the heart, and then it can transform people's heart. It was so evident when Srila Prabhupada would speak, it was so evident the importance of that, because there he was, just like I've been reading in Lilamrita, all of his struggles to overcome different obstacles, finally comes to New York. He's now where we are reading in Lilamrita, he just, he got settled at 26 Second Avenue. So he's just now, preaching to a very interested, a growing and very interested audience. But they're interested, but they're totally in a different mind space than Srila Prabhupada, obviously, right? A totally different mind space and activity space and whatever. One time Srila Prabhupada was lecturing at 26 Second Avenue, or maybe someplace. Anyway, he was lecturing in the beginning days, and he was talking about Krishna. And then he said, "Oh, have you seen a picture of Krishna?" No one in the audience had seen a picture of Krishna. No one. So that's a big gap between the realization, Srila Prabhupada's realization, and where the consciousness of the people were. But by his purity and conviction, and why? Because he had heard from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, etc., because of all those forces were in place, what Srila Prabhupada spoke could change the consciousness of the people that he was speaking to, who had, honestly speaking, a very dull consciousness, very covered over with, grossly sinful activities. But he could pierce through that by the force of sound vibration. Very important. In the Vedas explain that by sound vibration, we can reach the spiritual world. And by sound vibration, we can degrade ourselves also. So sound is a very, very important element in life. What we hear daily is very important. And yes, we take advantage of your morning class and this and that, and then the morning program up until the class, etc., etc. And then as soon as this finishes, and then prasadam, and then all the different duties, then what are we hearing? The rattling of the mind, the rattling, the complaints of this and that, the bodily discomforts, the likes and dislikes, whatever. But we got to try to keep hearing as much as we can during the day. And if you might, I'm in school, I have textbooks to read, I have this to do and that to do. Yeah, okay, that's all there. But find time to read. Find time to hear, or not just read, hear. Find time to hear, so that you have transcendental sound vibration going in. You'll find that it's very, it'll build your strength and your faith and your enthusiasm. Okay, I'm just going to read the verse to text 7. Being the eldest learned Vedantist, O Sutta Goswami, you are acquainted with the knowledge of Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of Godhead, and you also know other sages who are fully versed in all kinds of physical and metaphysical knowledge. So, in our language, we could say he's also hanging around with the right crowd. He's also hanging around with elevated spiritual personalities. That indicates what his tastes are. Because I used to hate it when my mother would tell me, "Show me who your friends are, and I'll tell you what you are." I thought, "Oh, Mom." But now, 47,000 years later, I can see, oh yeah, that was a good thing to say. Okay, so we'll go to text 8. Can somebody read the translation and then start into the purport? Jonathan, okay, Nitai, because I haven't seen Nitai for so long or heard from him. Hare Krishna.
Because you're submissive, your spiritual masters have endowed you with all the favors bestowed upon a gentle disciple. Therefore, you can tell us all that you have scientifically learned from them.
Okay, so just now, just before you start, think of what are the qualifications that have already been mentioned about someone who's going to speak? What are the qualifications that we've heard from previous verses and including this verse? Some things. Submissive, other things? Following the principles of purity, yes. Other things? Gentle, yes. Submissive, gentle, following purely. Scientific learning, and he can hear and explain, and he's heard from the right source. Okay, now you get the purport. Thanks. Till I interrupt you, which won't be long.
The secret of success in spiritual life is in satisfying the spiritual master and thereby getting his sincere blessings.
I think you should read that one again.
The secret of success in spiritual life is in satisfying the spiritual master and thereby getting his sincere blessings.
In the Nectar of Instruction, Srila Prabhupada says, the secret of success in Krishna consciousness is the proper attitude, which is exemplified here. But, excuse me, having the proper attitude, having a submissive attitude, having a gentle disposition, living a life, these things are very, very important. Okay, go on.
The Thakur has sung in his famous 8 stanzas on the spiritual master as follows. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master. Only by his satisfaction can one please the personality of Godhead. And when he is dissatisfied, there is only havoc on the path of spiritual realization. Okay,
so let's talk about that for a minute. Let's just churn that. How is it that the spirit pleasing the spiritual master is so important? How? Why? The way? What are your thoughts on that? Let's delve a little bit into that. Why? I mean, if a person has, let's just say this: if a person has some intelligence and they're reading Srila Prabhupada's books, whatever, so why is it so important that one has to satisfy the spiritual master? Hare Krishna.
I think because the spiritual masters are representatives of Krishna. They're representing through the disciplic succession Krishna.
Yeah.
And so when you are able to please the spiritual master, the chain goes down saying that, okay, Krishna is feeling pleased.
Yeah, good point. Let's go further. Jonathan.
If you're able to get bestowed upon you special blessings, then you're able to be empowered to do your service.
Special blessings will empower you to do your service. Right, Bruce, and then Charanti.
Krishna listens to his devotees. So
good point. Krishna listens to his devotees. You want to expand on that a tad more?
So if the guru is like, let's say, praying that the devotee, his disciple gets empowered.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, wow.
Very good. Krishna says, I'm going to do whatever he says because he loves me so much. Right. Charanti?
Say because like the verse that you chant before Bhagavatam class, because they imparted the knowledge upon us, we're indebted to them.
Yes.
In service.
Totally true, isn't it? And the very first verse of the Bhagavatam says that the Lord instructed Brahma through the heart. In other words, this knowledge, it's not just book knowledge. It's not just memorizing who spoke it to who and who said what. And it's not just it's revealed in the heart. It's revealed knowledge. We need to make our endeavor by hearing or reading or repeating and a combination of all of those. But it is revealed in the heart. It's revealed knowledge. It's not something that we're making ourselves qualified by our own endeavor. We're making ourselves qualified by following submissively, pleasing the spiritual master, who then prays on our behalf or whatever, or blesses us, that we'll be able to understand. By his mercy, then it's revealed to us. Then we have the strength to continue on. It's not just by my endeavor. Who can think of a few examples that of that? Not just by our endeavor we make progress, but by mercy. Yes, you're right. Go ahead, tell us, Nate. Yeah.
I think the classic example of that is Mother Yashoda
Yeah.
binding Krishna to the mortar.
Yeah, and what about it?
It wasn't by her endeavor alone. It was only because Krishna allowed himself to be captured, which the two fingers represent that. One is her endeavor and the other is Krishna.
Yeah.
Always 2 fingers too short.
Always 2 fingers too short. In other words, until Krishna's plea, until Krishna allowed himself to be bound by Mother Yashoda, she couldn't do it. And then when he saw her endeavor and this and that and her struggle, then he allowed her. She had just earlier in the morning and put that little belt around his waist. That was not a big, huge endeavor. But then later on in the day when she wanted to bind him up, unless he agreed, she couldn't do it. So that's very important, those two things. Another example Prabhupada talks about, slightly different, but it has the same importance, is the 2 tracks of the railroad train. They have to be parallel the whole time. They have to be equally distant the whole time. Just a little deviation on one of the tracks might not seem so bad in the beginning, but in the long run, a mile down the road, 2 miles down the road, forget it, the train is derailed. So similarly, we have to make our endeavor. It's not that we can just think, oh, Krishna, everything comes from Krishna when he wants. Sometimes people give that argument, especially if they come from India, they sometimes give that argument. When Krishna wants, then I'll become a devotee. When Krishna wants, then I'll surrender. But the fallacy of that is unless we want, Krishna is the fulfiller of all desires. So if we don't want, he's not gonna make, he's not gonna force us. He never forces us. So we have to make our endeavor, and we have to be determined, but we also have to be patient, because it's been a long time we've been in this material world. It's been a long time we've been hanging around with and developing bad qualities and bad habits. And when Krishna is pleased, then he'll reveal. There's a little bit more. Yeah, there's a little bit more. Can we read the last part? Go ahead, Nita.
Essential, therefore, that a disciple be very much obedient and submissive to the bona fide spiritual master. Srila Sutta Goswami fulfilled all these qualifications as a disciple, and therefore he was endowed with all favors by his learned and self-realized spiritual masters, such as Srila Vyasadeva and others. The sages of Naimisharanya were confident that Srila Sutta Goswami was bona fide. Therefore, they're anxious to hear from him.
Yeah. So just confirming all the points that were made. So the sages of Naimisharanya, they were anxious, they were eager, they were willing to hear from him. And they could realize that because of his qualifications, that he was a proper speaker. So just to review, the Bhagavatam starts off with the first verse in the first chapter describes the characteristics or qualities of Krishna. Then it goes to speak about the Bhagavatam, how this Bhagavatam is glorifying Shri Krishna, and this Bhagavatam is nicely presented because it was presented by people who were pure in habits and pure in consciousness, and further speaking on the qualifications of the speaker. Any comments or questions or discussions that you like to have? Advaita, that was the fast one. Jonathan, you were too slow on that one.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
There's something that Krishna says elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering why. Why he says that it is not a devotee. He says it is my devotee. But a person who is a devotee of my devotee.
Good point. That's a good question.
Why?
And I know you know the answer to this, but it's okay. It's a good discussion. But it's okay. It's very pertinent. So thanks for bringing it up. So what Advaita Prabhu is referring to is when Krishna says, somebody who says that he's my devotee is not really my devotee. But someone who's a devotee of my devotee, he's my devotee. So let's hear what you think about that. Let's churn it. What do you think? Why does he say that? Especially, here's the hint, in relation to what we just were hearing. Okay? Anyone want to start off the discussion? Nitai.
It just teaches us to be humble and not think that we can directly approach Krishna, that we have the qualifications and we have the power to understand Krishna by ourselves through our own endeavors, but to approach him through his devotees. So he's encouraging that if you're my devotee's devotee, then you're actually my devotee.
Right, right. Anything you want to add to that? Anyone? That's actually the whole point right there. What we're just reading now, that because if you hear from somebody who's heard from somebody who's heard from a pure source. So you're hearing from the pure source about the Lord. So without hearing from the pure source about the Lord, if you're just reading it without taking the process seriously, thinking that just by I've got a good brain, I can remember things. No, the whole process of devotional service is to submit to the process of the bona fide representative of the Lord. And therefore, if someone is doing that means that they've assimilated and heard properly from the proper source. And therefore, Krishna says, then that person who's devoted to my devotee, he's actually heard properly and assimilated. And if he's thinking that one can jump over the spiritual master or disregard the spiritual master in any way and still be a devotee of Krishna, he hasn't understood properly. He hasn't heard properly. He hasn't assimilated properly. Bridget, do you have a question or comment? Great. Thanks for, can we just pass you a mic because all those nice people in the kitchen, they like to hear and not to speak of the people online.
I'm just trying to comprehend the follow-up with the question
Okay.
that you gave. Is it like having association with devotees, like example, I'm having association with everybody here at Krishna house?
What we're talking about is Krishna saying someone who says that they're a devotee of Krishna without appreciating that the reason that we're trying to be devotees of Krishna is because we've heard from other devotees of Krishna. We've heard from, just like you said, the association of the people here who are also trying to be devotees of Krishna. That's very important. To think I can do it on my own, that's like a type of illusion, a big illusion. I can't do it on my own. This is why Srila Prabhupada established centers so that we can come together, get the association of those that are trying and of those that are aspiring, and that maybe all different levels of people. Some people know more than me. Some people know less than me. I interact with people who know more than me in a certain way, and I interact with people who know less than me in a compassionate way and tell them more. Association is very, very important. And so, and it's always stressed. And that's why Srila Prabhupada created centers that people can congregate who have a similar mentality or are trying to develop a similar mentality, So yes, thanks. And thanks for asking that question. Sometimes it gets scary to ask questions in the beginning, but we're all new here, so it's great. Thanks. Other points or takeaways from today's, Jonathan, yeah, you did. Thanks, I forgot. Didn't take me long to forget, did it?
Yeah, I'm kind of hesitant to ask this. Maybe it's gonna be a breakfast table conversation, but I was thinking about specifically the New Testament. And so Jesus, we know he was a spiritual master. We can call him that.
Yes,
without
Prabhupada called him that.
Anybody.
Mhm.
Some people think he was higher or lower scale of divinity, but for sure, right?
Right.
And he had disciples, and he taught them transcendental knowledge for sure. And We don't know if they had disciples. They probably did. And he started a disciplic succession. If not, he didn't even start it. He may have continued it from what he was learning when he was in Juggernaut 40, right? So that book, though, the New Testament, it's got 4 books from his disciples. But those books, we know historically, critically, were written by early Christian scholars in different locations, and they even weren't all in the same place. And they were depicting the perspective of the disciples that were there. And there may be some very, there may be a lot of clear truth to what they saw, what was describing what they saw, right? But then it kind of ends. It ends. And if we learn Christianity today, we're not learning from a disciple of a disciple of a disciple from Thomas. But, so here's what I get into. But people still have some level of spiritual realizations from reading about that spiritual master from this kind of broken disciplic succession. Why is that?
Why do they have some knowledge, even though the disciplic succession is broken? Because they have some knowledge, but that's the point. Some knowledge isn't enough, or one of the points, one aspect of the point, one aspect of the whole thing. Some knowledge isn't enough, and how to apply that knowledge. Just like, the 10 Commandments. This is what Srila Prabhupada, he would always, in any conversation with a representative of the Christian church or Christian faith, he would always hone in on the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill. And if that's number 1, and they're not understanding number 1 properly, they're not applying it properly, they're only half applying it, which is, that half that they apply is good, but the other half is also huge too, So then they're not getting the proper conclusion. And so just like any of you who are studying engineering or whatever, anything, even programming, computer programming, if your first calculation is off, then your whole work is just like a waste in that sense, because it's not going to come out, because you didn't calculate that the river is actually 40 feet long and the bridge has to be at least 50 feet, and you calculated it wrong, and it's just, you know what I mean? Just starting off wrong. So, but so again, stressing why it's important to hear from, and Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita in the 4th chapter, I've spoken this knowledge in the past, but the chain has gotten broken, and therefore the people aren't following it properly. Therefore, I'm reestablishing it again. So it's important to have that succession for complete knowledge. But knowledge is knowledge. So if they're getting a little bit of knowledge, but if you remember that other saying about a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing, so they got some benefit, but not total benefit in order to change their life. So I think we should end there because it's past time.